Hi, Felicia. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
Can you please introduce yourself to the audience that is watching or listening to the podcast?
My name is Felicia Biggins. I am an HR manager. I've been in HR for a number of years. We'll just leave off the number, if that's okay with you. I was born in Massachusetts, but raised in a military family, so I've lived all over. I definitely believe in moving every day. I don't participate in a particular sport right now. I love reading. I'll read almost anything. And I have a weakness for Marvel comic movies.
Okay. So, since you are from Texas, where did you study actually? In Texas or any other state?
No, I studied here. As I mentioned, I was raised in a military family, an Air Force family, and so I went to three different high schools. I we were around, but came here to UT. We actually lived here from the time I was in like the second grade through about the middle of the ninth grade. So I was very familiar with UT. Had kind of an affinity for it even back then. So once I graduated from high school in Oklahoma, I made it to Austin for school and have pretty much stayed here. I had a stint in Tyler, Texas when I was an insurance adjuster after school, but I've lived in Austin basically since the late 80s.
Okay, so that's a cool education that you had. And how were your first work experiences?
Okay. So I started as a camp counselor with a YMCA, which taught me a lot about working with people and working with different personalities. Even though they were children, um, a lot of us are just very large children in some respects. So it was helpful. That first work experience. After I graduated from college, I was an insurance adjuster with Allstate, bodily injury and property adjuster. So um, completely different from what I went to college for. By the way, I have a degree in Russian,
Okay.
so which doesn't come in handy at all in my work life. But um, I was an insurance adjuster when I left Tyler, moved back to Austin. I started working with a small print distributor, a magazine distributor, and I was an account manager. From there, I went to a tech company uh, and started working as their customer service and tech support manager. The HR manager left, and instead of hiring someone, my boss, who managed both of us, said, "Hey, why don't you just do the HR job as well?" And because I didn't know any better, I said, "Sure. How hard can it be?" And I would say within about 6 months, I told him I'm going to have to do one or the other. Like I can't do both. And so stuck with the HR job and have grown from there.
So, what other position have you been through before reaching your current HR manager role? Was it escalated or you were just thrown into your actual role?
So I worked for a smaller company, this tech company, which eventually was called High Performance, was at its height, maybe 125 employees, spread all over the US. And then we had a small operation in England, a smaller operation in France, and then a tiny operation in Japan. So we had employees all over the country and in a few other foreign countries. And I was the HR director. I was a department of one. At some point, I did have a generalist who worked with me, but mostly it was me. I had to learn U.S. HR and international HR very quickly, sort of just on the job, and yeah, so I was a director right away. My next company was also a tech company, also pretty small, also multinational. I would say within more countries though than my previous job, and I was a director there as well. Again, a department of one. So, and it's very common in small companies to hand out titles versus salary. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah. So when I came here to Texas Disposal Systems, was an individual contributor. I actually was brought in to temporarily replace someone who was on maternity leave, and then they just kept me as a contractor for several months, actually about 18 months. And then I became an employee. So started out as gosh, I can't even remember my title back then. It was so long ago. But just to have sort of moved up in the department. We have a director above me. There's a couple of other managers who are, I don't want to say we're siloed, but we each kind of have our own areas of expertise and responsibility. So there's someone who manages benefits and someone who manages the recruiting function. And then I handle employee relations, work comp, and our training and development.
And what do you like the most about working in HR or being an HR manager?
I like the employee relations aspect of what I do because it's, a large part of it is employee discipline, and kind of walking managers and employees through the disciplinary process. But the other side of that is, talking with employees to help them improve their working relationships. A lot of times people come to HR because they don't get along with someone. And I heard an HR consultant say this years ago, and it's always stuck with me. And that is, HR is not responsible for everyone else's working relationship, right? We each have a responsibility to learn how to work with others. And, as adults, you understand you're not going to get along with everyone, but you do need to be able to work civilly and respectfully with your coworkers, regardless of your like or dislike of them. And so just, when an employee comes to me and says, so-and-so said something mean to me, so working with that employee to then go back and have that one-on-one conversation with that person and learn those skills to better their working relationship. So that to me is pretty fulfilling. I enjoy that part of my job more than probably anything else.
Considering that you have a long career in HR, can you tell us actually any good memory that you have?
Sure. We had have an employee here who started out, and I hope it's okay that I'm telling this story if he sees it, but he started with the company, years ago as a mechanic helper, and just sort of, grew with the company as his skills grew. He kind of moved up into, a lead role and a supervisor role. And then a management position came open and he applied for it. He interviewed, they offered it to him. So we were all very excited. And then I heard he turned it down. And I was pretty surprised by that. So I called him and said, "Hey, what's going on? Why did you turn this job down?" And he said that he was afraid that if he took the job that he would mess up. He would make a big mistake, that he couldn't come back from, and that he would disappoint everyone, himself, his family, the company. And so I said, I get it, but you have a support staff here. You have us in HR, you have your director. Nobody wants you in this position to fail. We're all here to support you and to see you succeed. And I wish you would think about it. So it was Friday afternoon. So he said, okay, I'll think about it over the weekend. And then he came back on Monday and he accepted the job. And he's been in the job now for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years at this point. And he's doing really well. And he does call when he's got an employee issue and he's, asking for, input and guidance about how to deal with it. And he's doing well. So that made me feel good. That I was able to maybe make him see another perspective, and to take the job in spite of his fear.
And keeping, the conversation about your HR roles, what do you think that were key challenges or achievements in your career that changed your mind and that you start thinking about, wow, now I'm an HR leader?
So I think that, anytime I'm able to help someone through a process. That's information for me. It teaches me about what, the way to reach someone who maybe is a little difficult for me. I, I I'll give you another example from my current position, and this is a company that's been around for a number of years, 45 years, I think. And when I came here, there were people, managers, supervisors who'd been here for a number of years, and when there wasn't an HR department. So they were kind of used to doing things their way. And so the last thing they wanted was to see an HR department and, people telling them no. One in particular is really tough. He was very open about his disdain for HR. And, this is somebody that I have to work with. And I just, over the years, have just been very consistent with being willing to help and sort of reminding him that I'm here to help with employee issues. And it was tough for the first several years, but now this is someone who will pick up a phone and call me before he fires someone, which is great, because sometimes that's not really the step we want to take. But he's become open to the idea that, we're here to help him. We're here to make his life easier, not to, think of ways to mess up his day, which he did believe at the beginning. So that also has taught me about the value of being persistent and the value of building trust with someone and establishing some credibility with someone. They're not going to just believe me because I've been doing this job for a long time. I need to show them my value. So I think that's something that I really had to learn here.
Now let's talk about your day-to-day work and how's your team composed?
In the company, there are about 1,100 employees, between 11 and 1,200 employees. So we have a staff of 11, including a director, a few managers, and then generalists and other positions. Our company has locations all over Texas, throughout Central Texas, down towards Houston, and then out west to San Angelo. So we've got a lot of ground to cover, a lot of employees in far-flung areas. So 11, maybe 12 people would feel even better, but with 11, that's, pretty good number, pretty good ratio.
Considering that we are now in 2023, pandemic is over at some point, what do you think about remote work?
I'm not going to lie. If I had the option, even for a hybrid schedule, I think that, I would welcome that. I would jump on that in a heartbeat. One, because there's some flexibility. I'm sure you live in Austin, you know that our traffic is not great. And I think if I could get away with even a couple of days of not having a commute, that would be welcome. I think most people would welcome that. On the flip side of that, though, is that I have friends who worked 100% remote during the height of the pandemic. And one of them said she was actually jealous because my day had structure. I left, I went to work, I came home, I wasn't working. Whereas for her, she felt like, work was starting to eat into more of her evening or early mornings. So there was just less structure to her day. So I did appreciate that. I appreciated having somewhere to go when most people were just at home.
Since you're actually the leader of your HR department in your company, how do you plan tasks for them? Do you have any specific work methodology for them?
Well, I think it depends on what type of roles you're managing. In my case, I have a person who manages our work comp cases, and I have someone who focuses on training and development. She's a new hire, just hired her last month. And, they're both people who have done this work for a number of years. They're seasoned professionals. We talk about their projects, and then I leave it to them to figure out how to get things done, which is the way I prefer to work. I don't think that, people with this sort of experience need to be told, do A, then B, then C. It's, we need this training. Can you put it together and come up with a schedule? And then she does that. She knows if she runs into some sort of roadblock, she needs some help, she can come to me. I think it's different, just depending on the type of people, the type of roles that you're managing. But that's how I manage my staff.
So I have a very interesting question that probably the audience will like to hear from you. What software do you use? Do you switch over time? Software and HRIS, ATS, or whatever? What do you currently use, and what did you use in the past?
We use ADP Workforce Now. This is a system that we used in the past. We briefly left for another company. I won't say the name. It was horrible. We lived with it for 5 years, and I think we hated it every minute of those 5 years. It was just horrible. So we went back to ADP Workforce Now. So we use that to manage our employees and timekeeping and payroll. I also use HR Acuity, which is an employee relations solution. It's wonderful. If anyone's interested, hit me up. They're a great company. They're very easy to work with. Implementation was a breeze. I could do it myself, and I'm not, an IT person. And we have started rolling out the use to managers and supervisors so that they can make notes about employee relations. So, and it's been wonderful. So very happy to have that. We're currently kind of casting around for a training database solution. Haven't nailed that one down yet.
So Felicia, tell me, what do you think that could be improved in the HR industry? It could be technology-wise, wherever you think that, we as HR leaders, we need to change or need the industry to change.
Oh, good question. I don't know. As I mentioned, I've been doing this for a while, and I've seen HR become more and more professional. You can now get a degree in HR, whereas that was not an option when I was going to school. I mean, honestly, I don't know that it's something I would have looked at when I was in school, but the point is now you can get a degree in HR, you can get a master's degree in HR. So as the profession becomes more and more professional in terms of how organizations see them, I think that you'll see more and more HR professionals being included in leadership and in helping define a company's direction, which is, I think, the rightful place for HR.
So I'm a tech guy. So I wanted to question and hear this from you. How was your experience working with the internal IT department that you have in your company? Is it a good experience, bad experience? Just tell me how it is working with them.
Here at TDS, the IT team is about about hardware support.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that other system, that other HRIS we used was so difficult for us is, again, we're HR people, we're not IT people, we're not software people. We didn't have SQL experience, for instance, and a lot of the reporting needed someone with that kind of background, with that kind of skill set to run reports, for instance. Conversely, with ADP, I can easily, quickly create my own reports. I could never do that in the other system. So without that kind of support, it can be difficult. We're sort of limited with what sort of solutions we can use because we don't have that sort of support from the IT department. And I am not saying that to bash the IT department. I think they're focused on what the company needs, not what Felicia needs. So fair enough. But as far as working with them when we do need hardware, our IT team is great.
So we are coming now to the end of this episode, but before we finish here, I wanted to know what or where do you see yourself in the future in 5 years?
Well, in 5 years, I'm going to be sort of looking towards retirement. I won't be ready to retire, but I'll sort of be looking towards, my end game. Um, I would like to move into HR operations. So, looking at processes and implementing policies and, more on the financial side of HR. I think that's interesting. And that's an area that I think would come in handy in a lot of different organizations, having someone looking at HR metrics, for instance. So I'd kind of like to move in that direction.
And now tell me, what do you think about technology in HR? How do you think that it will change or improve the future of HR?
I think like everyone else, I think we'll become more and more dependent on technology to help us manage employees. What that looks like, I don't know. I think there are probably a lot of solutions out there already that I'm just not familiar with. But yeah, I think you'll start to see HR becoming more technology dependent.
So Felicia, let me ask you the last thing here. Please give me an advice for future HR managers and current HR managers. Just any advice that you think that will be helpful for them in the future and in their career.
I think it's important to establish your personal boundaries. HR is a job that can be very emotional. You're seeing people on, a great day, i.e. the day they get hired, the day they're promoted. But you also see people on their worst day when they get fired. And it can be very easy to get caught up in other people's emotions, in other people's emotions, especially when it's a negative emotion, when someone's being fired, for instance. And so I just had someone the other day tell me that I have a really thick skin because I had an employee kind of, yelling at me over the phone. And I said, I really don't have a thick skin. I just know that his anger was not about me. Like it's not, I can't take it personal because it has nothing to do with me. And so I feel like I have to do that a lot in my job, is just kind of remember this isn't about me, good or bad. This is about the employee, and that's where my focus needs to be, not on, my own sort of emotional response to it. And I just think that's something that I struggled with earlier in my career. And I allowed things to bother me. I took, that kind of weight, that emotional weight home with me. And that wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for the job. And it's certainly not good for the employee that you're working with. So yeah, I would say establish your personal boundaries, know what they are, know what you're comfortable with, and know the difference between someone being angry and someone being angry at you.
All right, Felicia, thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us and with the audience. It was great having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was fun.